Yo, what it do, y'all? I'm your host, Will. Welcome to Fandom Frequency, where we get into the entire multiverse of pop culture, comic book movies, anime, comic book movies. No, I was playing, but we get into all kinds of stuff around here. Honestly, guys, music, anime, TV shows, you name it, we talk about it around these parts. So make sure you're clicking all the buttons below the video and everything like that. But today we're talking about a comic book movie, of course, and we're diving into the MCU with The Marvels, the latest MCU release, starring our three versions of Captain Marvel, if you will, from the comics over the past 40, 50 years. And I'm talking about Carol Danvers's Captain Marvel from the Phase 3 2019 film, of course, played by Brie Larson. Teyana Paris's Monica Rambeau, who's also been known as Polaris, and another name as well in the comics, and was Captain Marvel herself at one time, played by the great and talented Teyana Paris. And we have the scene-stealing girl herself, Miss Marvel, none other than Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan, all coming together here in this trio for this latest installment in the MCU. And to say it and to put it frankly, wasn't a lot of hype out there in the fandom of the MCU for this film to actually release. People were not really feeling it. The MCU is in a very interesting place nowadays. Speaking for myself as an MCU fan, from the very beginning, before I even knew it was going to be a thing, I just wanted to see Iron Man on screen, just to see that get put to life. I wasn't a huge Iron Man fan back then, but I knew about the character, of course, from cartoons and comics and video games, and I thought it'd be interesting to see them do a Marvel film that wasn't about the X-Men or Spider-Man or something big like that. And I believe we also we had Daredevil and a few others, but those really did not meet the mark. Blade was really the only other thing outside of the X-Men and Spider-Man that was working, in my personal opinion, very well, or at least was running on all cylinders at that point in 2008. But Blade had kind of fallen off of its high glory with Blade Trinity the year before, Spider-Man 3 the year before. So the MCU kind of came in and rejuvenated the Marvel brand as a whole in the world of film. And it's kind of crazy to see 15 years later how much they've grown, evolved, achieved, and now are starting to struggle, where I think that the powers that be and the leader that we all know, Kevin Feige, has been getting stretched way too thin, way too much content coming out between Disney Plus and the films all at once. A lot of people feel like it's too much to keep up with. I don't personally feel that way, but I've been with it from the jump, so it doesn't necessarily feel fair for me to say that. But overall, I get people's perspective on it. But when it comes to this film, wasn't a lot of hype going into it for myself. Not a lot of hype going on in the world of the MCU as a whole, because some people feel like the projects have been very lackluster as a whole. I feel like it's definitely been mixed, and much more mixed than it used to be back in the day with the MCU, even in phases 1 and 2. So I think that's become more of the problem. The consistency and the reputation the MCU brand had as being top tier quality isn't necessarily as present anymore, and is definitely in a need of rejuvenation and a bit of a flux. There's been some great stuff from the MCU: No Way Home, Loki, WandaVision, Wakanda Forever. I think it's just damn short of being, it's just like this short of being like a truly astounding great film, but I still think it's very fucking good and has a beautiful story to tell. It has some really great casting and some beautiful moments. An Oscar-nominated performance by Angela Bassett, for Pete's sake. So you can't discredit everything in the MCU for sure, post-Phase 3. But it's definitely much more of a mixed bag than it's ever been before. But now I want to get into this movie, what I thought about it, my overall thoughts on it, and my anticipation kind of going into it before we get into the positives, negatives, and all the MCU tie-ins, if you will. So going into this, I was not necessarily super excited either. I definitely wanted to see the film. I'm an MCU fanatic. I've seen everything from the MCU minus some of those one-shots they were doing back in like phases 1, a little bit in phase 2. But other than that, I've seen literally every other piece of content. Oh, no, sorry. I'm lying again. I didn't see Inhumans, and I'd never watched all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But outside of those, between the Netflix stuff and everything on film and Disney Plus, I've seen everything in the MCU has to offer in those departments, which is the majority and really the stuff that matters. And I've seen all of it from Jump Street. I always see it right away. For one, I also don't want to get spoiled. And 2, I wanted to bring this review to y'all. And 3, I'm an MCU fan till the day I die, till the day that it's over, no matter what, unless everything becomes shitty and I'm not enjoying it whatsoever. That's not the case for your boy right here. I've been loving season 2 of Loki. I thought that was a phenomenal season overall. Had a few bumps in the road. I thought they did my character, or one of my favorite characters in the MCU as of lately, Sylvie, a little dirty, but Sophia DiMartino did come through with a great performance, and there still was some awesome moments with her in there. Bit of a questionable haircut, but still good stuff. But this film right here, I went in with tempered expectations. Wasn't expecting top tier MCU. A lot of people going into this thing just for the early reactions and stuff. Wasn't trying to get too deep into it, but from what I saw and what I heard, a lot of people were thinking this was very mid tier, very mediocre. Not necessarily disappointing, but for the most part, some people seem to either really enjoy it, get it more into that 7 to 8 kind of realm, or a lot of other people thought it was very mid tier. For me personally, this falls into the upper crust of the mid tier, if that makes any sense. It isn't necessarily the best MCU film by a long shot, but I think it's definitely an improvement over the previous film in its own series with Captain Marvel. I think it's one of the stronger MCU films in a while. Not the strongest. I would still put Shang-Chi over this one, but I think this film is just as good as Black Widow, if not better. I think it's definitely better than Eternals. I didn't dislike that movie, but I think it has a lot more issues than this one. And I also think it was more enjoyable for me than Ant-Man Quantumania earlier this year, and I definitely enjoyed it more than Thor Love and Thunder and She-Hulk, no doubt. Moon Knight even, potentially. But everything else I think I've pretty much liked more between phases 4 and 5 to now. So it's still that mid-tier MCU. It's not quite all the way there. There's some very sloppy storytelling going on, but the main dynamic with our three Marvels, Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and whatever you want to call Monica Rambeau, Professor Marvel, as they were joking about in the film. But if you want to look at those three main characters right there, those ladies were awesome. They had great chemistry together. So many fun standout moments with the three of them, in all honesty. Like, a lot of the moments with Iman Vellani when she, like, runs into Nick Fury when they're all teleporting and whatnot, and she's like, hi, and all the stuff with that. She's hyping. She's just, she's geeking out about it, and she's just super hyped to meet her hero, and she's just super stoked on it. Can't believe it's happening. Super starstruck, and that totally plays well and makes sense. A, because the character's always been written that way from comics to screen. Two, of course you would be a little bit tongue-tied meeting your hero. And three, Iman Vellani is a real-life MCU fan and has been since she was young, getting into more of the Phase 2, Phase 3 days of Marvel. So for me personally, it really shines through, and I think she just totally stole the show. I also want to give some praise to Brie Larson this time around. I think she definitely improved her performance from last time as Carol Danvers. I feel like I have a little bit of a better understanding of who she is as a character, who she is as a person, what she values, and what kind of makes her tick a little bit. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's like some kind of Loki level, character arc and all this deep character exploration and all that. No. But I do think that Brie Larson was able to inject just enough of charisma that wasn't there the first time around, just enough chemistry with the leads, just enough of a really good performance where the dramatic moments kind of needed it, hit some of the comedic parts as well. I don't necessarily think she stole the show, but I think she improved on the last one, and I just want to give her a little bit of love here. Teyana Paris, for me, was just as good as she's been before in WandaVision and things like that. I don't think she necessarily was better in this movie than she was in that, than just a few key dramatic moments where where the first one was where her and Carol and Iman Vellani with these Kree devices are sharing their memories and all that. And that sequence, that to me was some beautiful acting on the part of all three of them, but especially on Teyana Paris's part, being able to really play the trauma and the feelings of what she feels with the abandonment that she feels from Carol Danvers and all that stuff that plays into the first Captain Marvel. And the way that they lead you into that in a flashback format, but in a way that's informing the story and makes sense for the trajectory of the story they're telling, while sloppy, that part of it right there, that small element really worked well. And this movie definitely has a handful of those moments sprinkled throughout each act of the movie, and I think it does keep it together just enough where it's still enjoyable for me. It does get a little bit too silly at times, but overall, a lot of the humor did work for me, or at least make me smile or chuckle. Not everything, but a lot of the humor worked, especially with Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan, Sam Jackson's Nick Fury. While sometimes out of character, some of the lines really work because, it's Samuel Jackson, a.k.a. my favorite actor of all time. And I also think that Teyana Paris delivered some of my biggest laughs in the movie as well, so definitely want to give her a shout out. And yeah, all the humor didn't necessarily work for me as well as others parts did, but some of the stuff that really made me laugh really made me laugh. Yeah, and the action sequences that went down for the most part, especially in the first half of the movie, were really freaking dope, honestly. With them switching places when they're using their powers and all that stuff and teleporting from place to place and having in the way that they have to coordinate that and put that together and film that and get the right coverage was still very impressive, man. I want to give Nia DaCosta a shout out on that. Her direction was flawless with all the action sequences, especially in the first half of the film. And I do think some of the CGI gets spotty later, but in the first part, I thought it actually looked really good. And some of the ways that they actually visualize Kamala Khan's powers, I think, are definitely improved on the effects they had in her series, which was one of my few negatives of that show because I really enjoyed that one. But yeah, overall, I thought the effects with her looked a lot better this time around. I kind of called that when this came out, when they announced her to be in the Marvels, so kind of saw this coming, but either way, just figured I'd mention it. Let's see, what else, man? Any other big positives I want to mention on this one? And the post-credit scenes are freaking dope. I'm gonna leave that for later for when we get into more of the recap lore portion of it in a bit. But the fucking post-credit scenes, great stuff. And the ending of the film with Carol Danvers, getting them in their new place in Louisiana from Kamala Khan and her family after completely fucking up their house and whatnot, between them switching powers and whatnot between space and Kamala Khan's house in Jersey or their old house. R.I.P. to the to the old crib there. It was cool, you know what I'm saying? I did think it was kind of weird that they went to Louisiana, but the way that the scene played out with Kamala Khan and Carol Danvers and the way that they shared that moment in the plane that she used to own and everything at the house, where I think them and Monica Rambeau and damn, what the hell is Maria Rambeau, the mom, where she used to stay when she was still when she was still alive and whatnot. And I really love the way that the film ended on an actual emotional note with Monica Rambeau's sacrifice of staying in the alternate dimension in order to close that portal that hole or that kind of black hole that was about to cause its own incursion going on, and the way that she was able to tie that up and while sacrificing herself did play really well and actually added a little bit more emotion that was definitely missing throughout the film, while it's sprinkled in there in some great key moments. Even the one where Tiana Paris and Brie Larson are going back and forth as Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau about her leaving them and how that made her feel, and the guilt that Carol felt about what's going on in space and what's going on with that. And the way that they're able to play that scene out, I thought, while it could have been extended, they could have used more of that. The scenes where they do focus on the character development, they do focus on the history with her and Monica Rambeau, I think it does play a lot better in those moments, and does give the movie a little bit more weight than is normally given to it with the state of the storyline. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all my positives right there. Getting into more of my mixed and negative aspects of the film for me, the more mixed stuff, I think the humor sometimes doesn't quite land. It sometimes could be a bit forced, especially with characters like Nick Fury, where all the time him joking around in almost every scene, to me, felt a little much. Just tone it down just a little bit. But most of the humor works in the movie for me. It's just sometimes like some of these moments with like the whole cat bit, the whole bit with the people that only talk in singing speech and all that. I didn't like those two bits at all much, really. The cat one was a little less offensive to me, but the singing one got really old, really fast, and they definitely did not know how to execute that. If you put that scene in the hands of a Peyton Reed or a James Gunn, I'm telling you, that would have played out a lot better, and Edgar Wright or something like that. But no offense to Nia DaCosta or whoever wrote the film, but they did not pull that off whatsoever. But with the reshoots and the whole retooling they had to do throughout the pandemic and the strikes and all, whoever the hell else knows, who knows how it really was intended to be. But the way that it was executed, what I saw in the theater today, lame. Honestly, did not like that bit whatsoever. And at times in the second act, I thought they got too caught up with the bits and the gimmicks and the humor and the silly nature of MCU films. While when it's played right, it's fun. But I thought they just kind of loaded it all into the second act there and just put a little bit too much back to back with each other. Space out the humor, let this emotional stuff land, let that breathe, add a couple extra minutes so we can get a little more into some of these character dynamics and a little more of the character development. And also, the villain not developed enough whatsoever. The motivation's understandable with her wanting to get revenge on Carol Danvers for her starting this whole civil war, sparking up with her taking out the Supreme Intelligence, which ended up making a war between the Skrulls and the Kree that we all know about for the last 20 or 30 years in the MCU and for the last 5 to 6 years in the MCU, give or take. So for that whole thing playing out from the first Captain Marvel film to this one, I thought did add some connective tissue that has definitely been missing in some of the MCU projects these days. I think a lot of the connective tissue worked a little better here, but overall with the villain, very generic, not fleshed out enough whatsoever. Cool action scenes, pretty good acting on the part of the actress. I'll have to throw her name up, in here and give her a shout out, but I just don't know the name off the top right now. But I thought she did a really solid job with the performance. Not the greatest thing in the world, not the worst thing in the world. It was cool, but yeah, I just thought, and the story is sloppy, dude. Like, characters just ending up in places real quick. Certain things with the villain's motivations and the way she's carrying out her plan don't necessarily make sense either. Like, it just doesn't play as well for me when you look at the overall story and plot line. But the moments and the fun that you have with the characters does really provide you with a lot of entertainment value and gets you through the movie. It's really well paced for the most part. The hour and 45 minutes, you can totally see what the strategy was there. But I think adding just 5 to 10 more minutes, just letting some of the more emotional moments breathe with the characters, giving them more time as a team and a unit as the Marvels to connect a bit more on a personal level, I think would have just improved the story even more and stuff like that. But yeah, the villain just wasn't fleshed out. The plot was all over the place as well. Like, certain things with the villain just didn't add up whatsoever in what they were doing. Characters ending up in places super quickly, and I'm not talking about them switching places, just like where, like, just different moments and things like that where I thought the story was just very clunky. And that's what really holds this movie back. This really would have been up there in that B tier for me if it wasn't for a lot of the sloppiness of the story, too much of the humor in the second act, and not enough getting into the emotional stakes of the characters. But it does end on a really strong note, and it does really start in a really great way too. I say, like, the first 20 to 30 minutes to me is some really fun classic MCU stuff, and to me is not a bad thing whatsoever. Sometimes it's what you need, sometimes it's what you're looking for, sometimes it's all you really need is just to get into the fun of it all. But I'm not going to discount the sloppiness of the story, and I do got to keep it fair and call it down the middle, as they say. But overall, it's solid. It's not great, but it's solid. I would say it's like that top of the C tier. It's okay. It's pretty good. I'm definitely going to revisit it at some point. Not once a year, but on an MCU rewatch, when I'm in the mood or something like that, maybe with a date or something like that, it would be a fun watch, I'm sure. But the one thing I do want to nerd out about and give him some praise, though, was the post-credit scene, and we got to fucking kick in the X-Men goddamn, the X-Men freaking guitar riff. We got to get it going because I'm telling you right now, fucking X-Men in the MCU, it's official. Because with the ending, and I'm jumping post-credits here, but we got to get to the big one first. With the actual post-credit scene following up from the ending where Monica has to keep herself trapped in that multiverse in order to save them. She's ended up in an alternate universe where Maria Rambeau, or whoever she actually is in this Captain Marvel version of hers, doesn't have a daughter, never had a daughter, doesn't know who she is because she wakes up in the hospital and thinks it's her mom. Monica's like, "Oh my God, Mom, it's you. You're alive." And she's like, "Mom, who the hell are you?" You know what I'm saying? And then she turns and sees that the doctor that's taking care of her is none other than Hank McCoy, the Beast, baby. It's Beast. X-Men. It's going down. I don't know if it's Kelsey Grammer. I don't know who the fuck did the voice acting. I'm going to have to find out and throw that into this video because goddamn, the X-Men are fucking here, dude. Beast was talking to her like, somehow you ended up over here. You're from an alternate dimension. I don't know how the hell it happened, but Charles wants to talk to you. That's right. Charles Xavier, man. So hyped on that. Love it. Definitely ties into the Loki stuff. Definitely builds for what's to come. But we also are tying up loose ends from the story we were telling. So I love the way that this feels like classic MCU world building done right, in my personal opinion. Now jumping into the mid-credit sequence with Kamala Khan going somewhere over to where Kate Bishop is in order to recruit her, Nick Fury style, down to the garb and all. And I love the way that she plays that out. Amon Vellani. Fucking... She's a goddamn national treasure, I tell you. Just cracking me up with the, "So you want to join? Please." To Kate Bishop, Hailey Steinfeld back in action. The Young Avengers are going down, apparently, y'all. So those are two really big, cool concepts that we've been speculating on since 2019. Since they had the X-Men rights and all this other shit. Young Avengers, ever since they made those announcements in post-Phase 3. A lot of these loose ends that we've been kind of waiting to get addressed are starting to come together a little bit, and with them slowing their roll, with only Deadpool coming out due to the strikes and all these other things going on in the MCU as a whole, with Blade and Captain America New World Order, or whatever the hell the fourth one's called, and with Thunderbolts not even filming yet and having to get pushed back. If they can really retool those, get those off the ground, Deadpool 3 is a hit like we all expect it to be, and it's a dope thing for the return and all this great stuff for the MCU with Deadpool, I think the MCU could definitely be on an upswing, and I think this is a slight step in a more positive direction. But with Echo and everything else to come, we'll see what happens in the future. But I want to know what y'all thought about this latest MCU movie down below in the comment section. I love to discuss all of this nerdy goodness with y'all. Whether you loved it, whether you hate it, whether you fall somewhere in between, so similar like myself, let me know what you thought about it. I'm going to give this one just a 7 out of 10. It's entertaining, it's solid, but it's very flawed, pretty damn generic. Not the worst of the MCU, but it's pretty far down there in the overall ranking. That's for sure. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. Make sure you're checking out all the other cool content we got coming on the channel, man. We got music stuff on the works right now. Invincible Season 2 just dropped recently, so we're going to be doing a whole Part 1 recap for all of that once it all drops from the week-to-week release. Catch up on that Gen V as well. And we got a lot of cool plans we want to get into before the end of the year and for the holiday season. So make sure you stay tuned. You don't sleep on any of the dopeness we got going on here. I'll catch you on the next video. Appreciate y'all for watching and sticking to the end. Peace out.